Hello, my friends, and thank you for joining Internet Stories today. Today we have two great stories from ProRevenge. It's always best when you get that sweet, sweet revenge in the end. Our first story is about a kid who knows he should not be playing with fireworks because he always screws up. But he ends up getting some fireworks and setting the neighborhood ablaze. Tune in to hear the rest of the juicy details. Our second story is about a neighbor who has the idea to chop down the other neighbor's massive, really old sequoia tree. It turns out the wildlife cam came in and helped settle that matter. This story is called Accidentally Burned Down My Neighbor's Fence and She Tries to Milk Me for 10 grand. Judge humbles that ass up real quick. I was about 18 at the time, working for a security company. There were constant call-offs and no-shows. I have no idea why, but being so young and naive, I was constantly working 16-hour shifts and not coming home until 8 a.m. Also, I lived with my father at the time. The time frame of this was around 4th of July. I finally had a day off, and my best friend was back in town for vacation. We decided to get together and chip in on some good old American fireworks. To be fair, I have had nothing but bad experiences with fireworks, so I had no idea how this would be any different. We got home with the fireworks and we laid them all out on the floor. Sprinklers, bottle rockets, cakes, and Roman candles. I say, why don't we mess around with some sprinklers since it's still not dark yet? Great idea. We go into my backyard where it hasn't rained in well over 2 months, and it's extremely dry. You see the problem here? One of the little sparklers from mine and my friend's sparkler made contact with the ground and made two small fires that quickly spread to a large area. I ran as fast as I could to grab the garden hose and quickly started spraying down the fire. It was no use. It was spreading faster than I could spray it. I handed my friend the hose and called 911. What felt like hours was only 4 minutes, and the fire was spreading to the neighbor's fence. The neighbor came outside, and they were fairly calm to grab their own hose and spray down the fence, along with the dead grass in her yard. The fire department shows up, finally, and I tell my friend, only one of us needs to get in trouble. You should leave. He was reluctant to leave because he felt equally responsible, but I convinced him. I didn't want him to get in trouble and have to drop out of college. My neighbor was super chill about the entire situation at first. I told her that we could talk about replacing the fence and get some quotes to repair it. She was just super grateful that everyone was okay. About 2 hours after the fire, the arson investigator came to question me about the fire. I told him the truth. I said I was in the backyard by myself playing with fireworks and accidentally lit the ground on fire. I had gotten off that day without being hit by any charges and was commended for being honest. Here's where it goes downhill very fast. About a week later, I get a knock on the door from the neighbor. I opened the door. She handed me 2 pieces of paper for me to look at. There was a quote for the fence valued at around 4 grand and an estimate for lawn care. These quotes were really shady and just typed out on a Microsoft Word document. No logo or company name. She then adds, I will also be having you pay my water bill for 3 months because the new yard will need lots of water. Now the fence this woman had before was raggedy and falling apart. Her yard, dead grass, weeds everywhere, never mowed it. Now looking at this paper, she wants a mahogany fence in a brand new backyard with flowers and trimmed hedges. I said, I need to get an estimate myself. This doesn't feel right. She says, remember, you agreed to replace my fence, and a real man keeps promises. I shut the door and called my dad to tell him about what just happened. He flipped the F out and told me, son, don't you give that lady a single dime. He gives me the number of his handyman and tells me to take care of it. The next day, I had the guy come out for an estimate, and the neighbor ran outside, flailing her arms. I did not give you permission to get an estimate on my fence. Technically, it separates the property line, so it's both our fences. She calls the cops on me for having a contractor, and they ultimately can't do a single thing because I'm on my property. He quickly finishes the estimate off at $1,200. I also knew a guy who did lawn care from my time working at the grocery store. He estimated the lawn reseeding while she was away from the house to be about $800. After I get these estimates, I give copies to the woman, and she is having none of it. I don't know these people, and I don't want them near my house. They're probably really shitty contractors. I said, no, I know them personally. They are really nice people and do great work. She shut the door in my face, and I went on my way. I ended up working a 16-hour shift that night and got home at 8 a.m. And this woman comes knocking on my door at 9 a.m. and demanded I speak to her. I explained, I would really love to do this, but I just got home and I have to be back at work in less than 5 hours. I need to sleep. She goes, what kind of lazy asshat sleeps until 2 p.m.? At this point, I had about lost it and told her, you can either accept my $2,000 for my quotes or kiss my ass and get nothing. She stood there for a while with her mouth gaping open, but she accepted my offer and planned to meet down at the notary the next morning. I spent the next night after I got off work writing a contract and gathering the $2,000 in cash. The next morning I woke up and grabbed the contract to meet down at the notary. I was thrilled to finally be done with this broad and never speak to her again. I waited for her for over 3 hours and she didn't show up. I get a call from her saying, I'm sorry, the $2,000 isn't enough. I'm having my guys start work on this project and you will be paying me the full price. Oh, really? After that, I did not say a single word to her, and I watched for a few months as these guys turned her backyard into an oasis, complete with a small pond, brand new sod and flowers, the whole 9 yards. Come to find out, she had plans to remodel these things for a long time, and was just waiting for the opportunity to go through with it. Also, in this time, she used her remodel funds to go on a trip to Hawaii. You know how I found out about this? She was bragging about it on the neighborhood Facebook group and didn't know I was in it. I have a different Facebook name than my real name. Are you ready for the revenge? Now, 4 months after the fire and all the remodels, I get served papers to go to court for $10,300. At 18 years old, I'm having to hire a lawyer to work my case. When we finally do get into court, I lay everything out. The quotes, being harassed multiple times, not showing up after agreeing to a deal, not wanting me to get my own quotes, required by law, by the way, and her bragging about screwing me out of the money, and I have proof of all of this. The judge looked at her and said, Ma'am, with all due respect, you're out of your dang mind. Not only did this young man tell the truth of what happened, he offered to pay you more than what he was supposed to. Your lawn was already dead before the fire occurred. Therefore, he is only responsible for the fence of $1,200. I will also deduct from his lawyer fees $800. So I burned this woman's fence down, and all I'm having to give her is $400? Cool. She took a huge financial loss from this. Not sure how much the Hawaii trip cost her, but she was in serious debt. She ended up having to sell the house because of it and moved into a smaller house. Haven't heard anything from her since. This is a great story about the lady just being way too greedy. I mean, the law is not there to seek revenge. The law is there to make you equal. You have something, you lost it, you get it back. You don't get to have, 10 times what you had before just because, you want to take advantage of someone. That's not what it's there to do. This story is called Entitled Kid Chops Down My Tree, Costs Her 500,000 pounds or 700,000 freedom bucks. It's been 2 years and I can finally post about this. This is juicy, so get ready. Some background information. We live in an old and big manor that has been split into 3 attached houses. The houses are about 150 years old and were built around 5 huge giant sequoias, which are about 200 years old. In the UK, giant sequoias are very rare, and the 2 in our garden up the house value by about $60,000. We live next to 2 really nice neighbors, one young couple and one old couple. Unfortunately, our old neighbors passed away, so their child and her family moved in. Let's call her Jo. Jo was instantly a pain in the ass. We had been sharing chickens with the previous neighbors, and Jo agreed to keep sharing them. However, on her nights, she would constantly forget to put them away, so we would have to check them every night anyway. One night, her little brats thought it would be funny to open our personal duck pen in the middle of the night, which leads to a mass slaughter. Later, the chickens were murdered the same way. About 2 years ago, there was a storm, and one of her sequoias somehow fell over and died. They were distraught, understandably. But from then on, the jealousy started. She was constantly complaining about how lucky we were to have 2 sequoias in our garden and how our sequoia was making too much shade in their garden. It wasn't. Anyway, we just thought it was Jo being a pain. There were a few dry threats, like they will chop it down or maybe the next storm will blow it down. Until we came back from a holiday to France to find a huge 6-meter stump and nothing else. I mean, how the F do you get rid of a 100-foot tall tree in 2 weeks? 2 of our old British oak trees had been crushed as well. My mom and sister were crying. My dad was red in the face. And we had no evidence Jo had done it. She claimed that there had been a storm and she had to get rid of it. We had a security camera at the front of the house, but you can get in the back if you go through a few fields. We then were given a 8,000-pound bill for damages to her property and to have the tree chopped up and removed. The wood alone would have been worth a small fortune. We had lost all hope, and 2 weeks had passed when my dad came running in from the garden. He had put up a wildlife camera a few months ago and had caught everything. We got a lawyer on the phone and started our revenge. We got a tree surgeon out who said it was an original specimen brought into the UK in 1860, along with the 2 that were in Evanston Castle Country Park. There were 218 around the UK, but only 60 now. He also told us to call out an engineer because the roots might be in the foundation. So when they rot, it could damage the house. Turns out we would need to redo the foundations. Then we took Jo to court and sued them for damage to the property, trespassing, and lots of other smaller claims. The tree would cost $250,000 to have another sequoia that was 200 years put in and looked after. It's basically impossible. Plus the damage to the foundation, which was 200 grand, and the 2 oaks, which were another 25 grand. So with the smaller claims, it went to about 500,000 pounds, 700,000 freedom bucks. They had to move out. And we have now paid off the mortgage, done a lovely loft and kitchen conversion, and have basically done up the house and garden, as well as plant a 60-year-old sequoia tree in the back garden. We also had our kitchen counter and table made from the old sequoia. We now have a lovely family living next to us who share chickens, ducks, pygmy goats with. They are very nice, and I make a fortune babysitting their kids. Wow, sounds like they won't be cutting any more trees down anytime soon. I mean, trees are great. Trees give us oxygen. Don't cut them down unnecessarily. Like, I don't see how the tree could have been that bad. Oh, it was a little bit of shade. Shade's a good thing. Okay? Thank you, my friends, for joining Internet Stories today and listening to some crazy stories with me. I hope you liked all of them. Please like and subscribe for more future stories. Please let me know in the comments below if any of these stories sound familiar.